hope you guys enjoyed our apology video from this past Monday. I think now that we've addressed the controversy, we can just move on and pretend it never happened. Easy peasy. But today, we might not be doing that. Instead, we might be starting a whole new controversy. We're looking at rules. D&D rules. Broken D&D rules. The rules that people have completely misinterpreted in a way that made their game significantly worse. And at the end, I'm going to be going over rules that I've misinterpreted. Because come on, we are all human beings playing this game. And as human beings, we mess up. We mess up all the time. It is a natural part of life. But I still think there is something we can learn from those mess ups. So today, let's go over some Reddit rule misinterpretations and see if maybe they help improve the rules. Doubt it's going to happen, but who knows? Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, first up, you have to use your action that turn to prepare a reaction. All because the Dungeon Master didn't like the players using the shield spell against them. Okay, you want me to tell you something? I think the shield spell is basically mandatory in order to even have a chance of being missed by an attack, especially as you get to higher levels. Early levels, I think the shield spell is pretty powerful. You know, a lot of the bosses I throw at my players at early levels, they've got, I don't know, +5 to hit, right? So that means that if a wizard has a 12 armor class from decent dexterity, or even an 11 armor class from decent dexterity, a shield spell puts that up to 16, or maybe even 17. And you know what? That's a pretty good position to be in as a wizard. That means the attack has a decent percent chance to miss, like a 60% chance to miss if the enemy has like +5. The math checks out pretty well for you. But as you get to higher levels, the shield spell basically just turns it into a 50-50 shot. However, as you start getting higher levels, enemies start getting, I don't know, +13 to hit, and the shield spell starts feeling a lot less relevant. Not to say it's irrelevant, it's still useful, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Even at lower levels, it's a first level spell, and wizards at lower levels don't have infinite spell slots, so they're burning through those in order to block attacks. One time, you can literally watch this in actual play, an artificer was spamming the shield spell, and when they needed to heal an ally, they couldn't. Because, you know, they wasted all the spell slots spamming the shield spell. Yeah, they took 0 damage, but what about everyone else? I don't really think the shield spell is that big of a deal. That is my point. However, this whole thing of using action to prep a reaction, it makes combat so much less dynamic. D&D combat can already be pretty stilted. You know, you do the one thing on your turn and that's it. Reactions can spice that up. In fact, I'm hoping that WotC leans into giving more reactions to players and enemies so that there's more going on throughout the entire combat, even outside of your turn. However, doing it like this means that players don't even get that. They literally now only get the one thing and that's it. Sure, there are reaction abilities that I understand why people dislike. Silvery Barbs is something that me and Bob Worldbuilder were talking a lot of crap about. My point is, there are a lot of reactions that people don't like, Counterspell and Silvery Barbs being just among them. However, this completely neuters a very important aspect of the game. Reactions being something that I think should be more present rather than less. It just annoys me whenever DMs make combat even more stilted than it already is when they really, really don't have to. Some clown, one of these subrats, was very adamant about how climbing should be a dex roll because you use your legs a lot more than your arms. And apparently, arms equal strength and legs equal dex. And here I thought that the more martial skills were the ones that people just understood. Ginny D made whole videos about interpreting wisdom and intelligence and charisma, and during her wisdom video, I remember her getting so much crap for it for honestly dumb reasons. But now I'm seeing that I guess people misinterpret the martial skills, strength, and dexterity just as much, which just means I think there's just a lot of stupid people in the world. A fact I already knew, but a fact that's just now further confirmed. Honestly, I don't really put a lot of weight into interpreting skills. I just kind of roleplay characters the way I roleplay them. I'm not going to roleplay a negative intelligence character as a genius or anything like that. That's a little bit too much suspension of disbelief. But at the same time, I don't think that you need to wholly base your roleplay on your stats. Sure, there are situations where I think if you play a super charismatic character who has negative charisma, that's a little bit awkward. But at the same time, you know, when you're playing a character, I don't think you should be enslaved to your stats. Like, if you have moderate charisma, it's not like you're incapable of telling jokes or being charming. It just means your charisma is moderate rather than excelling, you know what I mean? When it comes to martial skills, I think about those even less, especially when it comes to just doing things in combat. When I'm describing things in combat or during some kind of major chase sequence, when you would be climbing up a cliff or slamming your hammer into an enemy, I just gotta let my players do their thing. It's more fun for them to just go full Mortal Kombat with it. Again, as long as they're not getting too crazy with it, I'm good with whatever they say. I'm not gonna say, oh, your bard can't do that move because your strength isn't high enough. That would just be lame. This interpretation of strength and dexterity just makes things way more limiting. Again, a rule misinterpretation, intentional or not, that makes the game less fun in general, both from a description standpoint and from just like a mechanical standpoint. I mean, this may discourage players from climbing on stuff, but in games where climbing is more of a thing, I mean, that again makes the combat more dynamic. Just like the last rule, we have a DM who, intentionally or not, is making combat just more stilted when it really doesn't have to be. I used to think that if you failed a medicine check to stabilize an ally, that would make them fail a death save. And I told the people I played with, who believed me, and I accidentally killed a party member. I kind of like it. I like it just a bit, if I'm being honest. Now, I will say, this is not a rule I'm going to implement, because medicine stabilizations are already something that my players don't do a lot, if ever at all. I mean, my players have access to healing word, to cure wounds. These are much more practical ways to get players back into the fight. And by the way, I used to be pretty against death whack-a-mole. When someone hits 0 hit points, I was pretty gung-ho about them being at 0 hit points for some time. Having some kind of consequence for hitting 0 hit points was important to me, but I realized that I didn't really have a good approach. Keeping a player at 0 hit points, keeping a player unconscious, keeping a player out of the combat, that's just not fun. Not fun at all. There are going to still be consequences. I still have homebrew rules that make it so there are severe consequences for hitting 0 hit points. For example, when you get back up after being downed, you suffer a point of exhaustion. And as those points accumulate, your dice rolls get exponentially negatively affected. To the point where at 3 to 4 levels of exhaustion, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail most saving throws and most attack rolls. It gets pretty freaking rough. And when you get 6, you just die permanently. You're not getting back up ever again. So yeah, there's still major consequences to hitting 0 hit points, and major consequences for continuing to hit 0 hit points over and over and over again, death whack-a-mole style. But my players can still, play the game in some way. They can still be active participants. I'm not going to keep them incapacitated anymore just because I want there to be consequences. The consequences shouldn't take away the fun, you know what I mean? But anyway, back to medicine checks and stabilization. My players rarely use this. I mean, yeah, I set the DC to be decently low, but I can literally count on one hand the amount of times they've done it. With the existence of spells and potions that they can use, a stabilization check that brings someone up to 1 hit point is just not all that tempting. A rule like this, while I do like it in a more grim, dark game like my own, I at the same time acknowledge that it would make medicine checks even rarer. This is one of those things where you need to balance your game design philosophy alongside the practical application. Yes, this kind of rule makes sense for my game. I'm a dungeon master who runs something more hardcore, so a rule that makes consequences for failed medicine checks, that makes sense. But look at the actual game. Look at how it's actually played and realize that medicine checks are already really rare, and this would basically make them completely irrelevant. It's the philosophy versus the actual practical application. And the application here just means that I don't think I'm going to use this. There was a guy on r/Power Gaming who once tried to explain how Minor Illusion was the most powerful divination spell in the game because it didn't specify what you could make. So obviously, if you walked onto a crime scene, you could Minor Illusion the image of the murderer with no investigation. It didn't matter. You didn't know anything because the spell didn't specify. You had to know what you were talking about to create an illusion. No. That is an incredible misinterpretation of the rules. A next level one. In fact, one that basically makes players clairvoyant. And the reason I picked this one in particular is because recently I have been giving my players crap about their liberal use of minor illusion. They sometimes confuse it for major illusion, which is not great. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I kind of leaned into it myself. I mean, Minor Illusion is a really versatile and fun spell. I mean, my players use it to, for example, hide in the snow. They just bury themselves in the snow, and then they Minor Illusion some snow over themselves to make sure the enemy can't see them. And I understand that's going to be a really bad, unrealistic illusion, but I allowed that just because it's a cool, creative, and smart idea, a way to use this spell. But, you know, my players have really been pushing that boundary and using it for more and more stuff that maybe a cantrip shouldn't be used for. However, this goes way beyond anything my players ever even thought of. This is one of those things where rules as written versus rules as intended is kind of important. Like, going over the minutia of the spell to basically make yourself clairvoyant is pretty silly. I mean, recently somebody proposed a College of Creation Bard, and I was going through the College of Creation Bard wondering how they could use this thing, and it's really, really cool, but there are a lot of ways that people try to manipulate the game to make College of Creation extremely overpowered, and just generally, this is my rule of thumb. Look at the opportunity cost of what the player is doing. So, for example, Minor Illusion is a cantrip. It should do cantrip level stuff. It shouldn't be able to do something that Major Illusion, or the spell Clairvoyance, or the spell that lets you talk to a god. I don't remember what it's called, but that spell exists. It's on the screen or something. It's out there. I saw Caduceus use it, so it's definitely out there. But the point is, Minor Illusion shouldn't be able to do the things those spells can do. As another token, the College of Creation 3rd level ability that lets them create something with a 2nd level spell slot shouldn't be able to instantly crush enemies with a boulder, or shouldn't be able to instantly trap enemies in a big unbreakable cage, because it's a 2nd level spell. Just straight up. Now, you don't need to use that reasoning, but as a guy who does care about the, integrity of my combats and cares about game balance, that is the rule I use. Does this ability exceed the expectations of its spell level? And if it does, sorry, we're gonna tune it down. A friend of mine thought Hypnotic Pattern would hit everyone on the battlefield, controlling everyone with a 3rd level spell. His argument? It says anyone in the area who can see it needs to make the save. I'll just cast it 30 feet over my head, so I can't see it. My dude, the spell is listed as a 30-foot cube. What? Oh my god. This is one of those hills that people love dying on. This is the same exact thing, by the way, as the Minor Illusion thing. Taking a spell and then using some BS interpretation of its description to make it way, way, way more powerful than intended. Which, for Hypnotic Pattern, is kind of crazy. I never really hyped the spell up in Dungeons and Dragons, but in Baldur's Gate 3, oh my god, I shut down whole hard mode encounters with just this spell. It was insane. I mean, I don't know how powerful it is in D&D, but in Baldur's Gate, yikes, I folded House of Grief so many times with this spell just to get revenge over my first playthrough of it, because god, I hate that thing so much. Anyway, House of Grief hatred aside, I basically went over the same reasoning I would use for this. Spells can't be used for more than they are intended to be used, at least in my game. I understand how infinite Hypnotic Pattern radius might be cool, but again, it just trivializes the game. And is it going to be fun anymore? No, it's not. I had a DM in 3.5, and I'm sorry, I don't know much about 3.5 rules, so you're gonna have to excuse me here, who 100% believed reach weapons just shut down melee opponents due to the following rules text. Attack of opportunity interrupts the normal flow of actions in the round. If an attack of opportunity is provoked, immediately resolve the attack of opportunity, then continue with the next character's turns. So, if I charged into an opponent with reach, they would simply use an attack of opportunity on me. And, hit or miss, my turn would be interrupted, and we go to the next player's turn. Again, I don't know if that was intended, but I mean, it definitely sounds like that after reading the DM's explanation, though obviously I know that's not what the book meant. How does it word it in 5e? I wonder if they changed it to respond to this exact thing. Attack of opportunity in D&D is something that I think is overhyped. A lot of people are deathly afraid of attack of opportunity. Like, the notion of getting hit with an attack of opportunity is like worse than death itself. I mean, at least in my games, I don't think it's that bad, especially since a lot of the time, look, they might miss you, who knows? But Yeah, I think attack of opportunity is kind of overhyped, but I think at the same time, that fear of attack of opportunity a lot of people have gives D&D one of its biggest problems. That problem of paralysis. We talked about stale combat at the beginning of the video, but a big reason why D&D combat gets so stale is because everyone usually just stays in the same freaking place the whole time. I remember my epic battle against the Midnight King of Draconia, a gargantuan twilight dragon. It was epic. It was awesome. In theory, my players were kind of just trapped in the same corner of the map the whole time. They didn't really have much of a reason to move, and when the Midnight King was on their face, they had even less of a reason to move because attack of opportunity from a dragon really is not that much of a joke. Now, of course, Midnight King fight was way before I discovered our Lord and Savior Flea Mortals, but still, even with Flea Mortals, I encountered the same exact problem a lot of the time. Attack of opportunity, paralyzing my players with mostly just fear, not really anything in the actual rules. However, here, now, it's even worse. Now, when you approach an enemy, you get an attack of opportunity, which means you're just going to be paralyzed both sides over, and that's just not fun at all. Attack of opportunity is a feature of the game that I think is fine. I think people just need to stop fearing any points of damage and just move their characters if they need to be moved. Or DMs need to incentivize movement more as a reward. However, making attack of opportunity stronger in this way so that it completely skips over people's turns, yeah, not the play. But anyway, look, we're not ending the video now. I want to go over some of my own rules misinterpretations, some of my own mess ups, because God, I have some doozies. So, first up, I had no idea how people acquired spells. Like, I thought that you could only get spells from spell books that you pick up in the world. I didn't even realize that you learn new spells as you level up. I thought the only spells you learn as you level up were the spells given to you by your subclass, which, yeah, no. Luckily, that got corrected pretty dang quickly, because that was stupid. Okay, other one with spells. I didn't even realize what prepared spells meant. Like, I didn't realize that prepared spells meant that you have your entire spell list and you prepare a certain amount of it. And guess what? I didn't even realize that until I played Baldur's Gate 3. Like last September. This was a thing that I believed for a significant portion of my Dungeons & Dragons YouTube career. I didn't get how prepared spells work. I thought that you had a portion of the spell list and you prepared a portion of that portion. Look, I know I'm stupid, okay? You can't call me dumb because I'm calling myself dumb, okay? That's how it works, alright? Please leave me alone. Alright, moving away from spellcasters, poor rogues. I thought that in order to get sneak attack, you needed to have advantage. So, you needed to flank your enemy. That's what I thought the whole ally within 5 feet rule meant. I thought you had to flank. I thought that was a requirement at baseline. And I didn't realize I nerfed rogues big time by doing that. I didn't realize that, again, until I streamed an actual play show with a rogue in it, because someone corrected me, and I was like, wow, I messed up. I like that flanking rule, by the way. Hot take. I don't think rogues are too powerful or anything. I just think it's cooler. It doesn't nerf rogues really all that much, at least in my opinion. I guess ranged sneak attacks can get kind of hit by that rule, but melee sneak attacks just get way more fun for my players to deal with. I mean, now they have to plan out their flanks. It makes the combat more dynamic, and trust me, my rogue was getting plenty of sneak attacks as is, especially after she got access to invisibility. It was crazy. So yeah, I don't think it's a major nerf to rogues. It's actually a rule I really like, though it was based on a misinterpretation. But yeah, there are plenty of rule misinterpretations that I've made throughout my life, because we're not perfect. Like I said at the top, we mess up. It is a normal part of being a dungeon master. If you've misinterpreted a rule, please let me know. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you guys want to see more of our content, then you can check out our RPG horror story series, where we talk about horror stories from D&D games, the best, the worst. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave a comment with your worst rule misinterpretation, both one you've seen or one you've had yourself. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell. Ow. That didn't actually hurt. It's just whenever something scares me, I say ow on instinct. Hey guys! The camera's crooked.